Action 1. The rule beneath the silence. In Japan, silence is not the absence of rules. It is the rule itself. Tokyo. Rain whispers against the pavement. The streets are lit like circuitry, signs blinking in kanji, vending machines humming like living things, neon gliding across umbrella tops. Two figures walk side by side beneath the awning of a convenience store: Daniel, a tourist from New York, and Emmy, a translator born and raised in Saitama. Daniel stuffs his hands into his pockets. "It's weird," he says, eyes scanning the faces around them. No one's talking. No music, no yelling, no buskers. It's like the whole city is on mute. Emmy laughs softly. "We talk, just not always with our voices." Daniel raises an eyebrow. "That's supposed to be deep?" She shrugs. In Japan, rules aren't always written on signs. They're in the air. In the silence. Japan is famous for its order. Trains run to the second. Shoes are always removed before entering a home. People don't talk on phones in public. But what most foreigners don't realize, what Daniel is beginning to understand, is that many of these rules aren't laws. They're enforced through shame, social pressure, and centuries of tradition. It's not just what you do in Japan. It's what you don't do. And what people won't tell you until you've already broken it. Scene: the first rule break. A few days earlier, Daniel had stepped into a ramen shop in Shibuya. He was jet-lagged, hungry, and excited. He laughed loudly as he FaceTimed his sister, waving his phone to show her the vending machine ticket system and his steaming bowl. People turned. Not just turned, froze. A woman at the counter looked down. The old man next to him muttered something under his breath. The chef's hands never stopped moving, but the flicker in his eyes said enough. No one said a word to Daniel. But he felt it. Like a wall of cold air. Afterward, Emmy explained. Talking loudly in public is seen as selfish. Especially on phones. It disturbs the space we all share. Even if no one tells you, everyone's judging. The rule beneath the rule. This moment, seemingly small, is at the heart of the Japanese social code. Social harmony, /wa, is more important than individual expression. In Western countries, there's pride in breaking rules. Rebellion is identity. In Japan, rule-breaking is identity too, but it's the wrong one. A selfish one. A dishonorable one. You're not just a loud tourist. You're a disruptor of the wa. You are shame made visible. Spoken rules versus silent expectations. Daniel asked, "But where are the signs? How am I supposed to know?" Emmy smiled gently. "You're not. You're supposed to observe. That's the terrifying thing. Most rules are not posted. You must read the air, kuki wa yomu." In Japan, that phrase literally means reading the air. It refers to understanding unspoken expectations. If someone subtly shifts away from you, it might mean you're too close. If everyone lines up silently, you should too. If nobody eats while walking, don't. Even if the law allows it. How these silent rules shape the nation. While this sounds strict, it also produces beauty. Subways run silently, no screaming, no phone calls, just rustling newspapers and gliding doors. Neighborhoods are clean, no garbage bins on sidewalks, no overflowing public trash. Public restrooms are spotless, and shoes are always removed at thresholds. People apologize when they sneeze. Even sneezing is seen as disrupting the silence. Everything is choreographed by invisible guidelines, a country not of surveillance, but of internalized order. Why foreigners feel the rules, but don't see them. Many travelers to Japan report the same eerie feeling. I didn't do anything wrong, but I felt like I was doing everything wrong. That's because Japan doesn't need to enforce rules loudly. Social punishment is quieter: a glance, a retreat, a delay in service, a closed door. There's no Karen screaming. No confrontation. Just distance. Closing reflection. Daniel, finally understanding, walked back to his capsule hotel that night under the red glow of lanterns. He said nothing. He walked quietly. He bowed slightly to the night manager. He removed his shoes without being asked. For the first time since arriving, no one looked at him twice. And in that invisibility, he felt he had finally entered Japan. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 2, Garbage Sorting Hell. Why taking out the trash in Japan is one of the most stressful experiences for foreigners, and how neighborhoods enforce unspoken laws more strictly than the government itself. Shall I begin writing section 2? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is section 2 of your cultural analysis. Section 2, Garbage Sorting Hell. In Japan, throwing away a can of soda can feel like defusing a bomb. Wednesday morning. The alley behind Daniel's Airbnb in Kyoto was quiet except for the metallic click of bicycle gears and the creaking of a blue trash bin lid. Daniel stood holding a crumpled can of Georgia black coffee in one hand and a flattened cardboard box in the other. Next to him were 4 buckets, each labeled in kanji he didn't understand. One had clear plastic, another was full of Tide bags, and 2 were empty. He hesitated. From the apartment balcony above, an old woman in a beige sweater was staring down at him. A scene that repeats across Japan. Foreigners often come to Japan believing the culture is about simplicity and cleanliness. But the act of throwing away trash is so complex that it requires pamphlets, neighborhood briefings, and even scheduled police visits. Every city, town, and ward in Japan has its own garbage sorting system, with strict rules about what to throw out, what day to throw it out, what type of bag to use, whether the item must be washed, cut, flattened, tied, or labeled. In Tokyo's Setagaya ward alone, there are over 40 categories of garbage. That's right, not just recyclable and not recyclable. We're talking PET bottles, caps off, label removed. Burnable, food waste, tissues. Non-burnable, ceramics, metals. Oversized garbage, furniture. Hazardous, batteries, lighters. Paper cartons, separate from newspapers. Cardboard, flattened, tied with string. And more. When Daniel got it wrong. Back at the Kyoto alley, Daniel dropped the soda can into the bucket with other aluminum. Seconds later, the old woman from the balcony came downstairs. No words, just a look. She glanced at the can. Reached in. Pulled it out. Then tapped the side of it and pointed at the cap, which was still attached. He bowed. Apologized. She nodded and walked off. Later, Emmy explained. You're supposed to remove the plastic part before throwing it away. Otherwise, it's contaminated and the whole batch might get rejected at the recycling center. How the neighborhood watches. Japan doesn't rely on centralized garbage enforcement. Instead, neighborhood associations and retired residents act as unofficial inspectors. They check trash bags for violations. They leave notes on improperly sorted waste. In some neighborhoods, violators are shamed publicly, a tag tied to their bag saying, "Sorting incorrect." Daniel learned that there are even volunteer garbage leaders, Gomitoban, who rotate weekly to inspect bins. Sometimes, cameras are installed. Other times, the punishment is more psychological, you become that neighbor. Foreigners and the trash trap. One expat in Osaka shared. I was invited to a neighborhood meeting where they literally read out my apartment number and explained that I had failed to cut my milk cartons open before disposal. For foreigners living in Japan long-term, the stress of garbage sorting becomes routine. It's a survival skill, like using chopsticks or knowing when to bow. Why so strict? Japan has very little space for landfills. The country incinerates about 80% of its burnable waste, but incineration still requires careful sorting to avoid toxins. Recycling centers have tight contamination limits, and improperly sorted trash can ruin entire loads, meaning recyclable goods are sent to landfills or rejected entirely. But there's another reason. Garbage sorting is an extension of Japanese group responsibility. Everyone is responsible for keeping the area clean. A single person who messes up ruins it for the whole block, and in Japan, no one wants to be the one who disturbs the harmony. Just take it to the convenience store. Some tourists try to cheat the system, throwing away trash at 7-Eleven or Family Mart. But those trash bins are often for store-bought items only, monitored by staff, or missing entirely, especially in tourist areas. In places like Shinjuku or Kyoto's Gion district, you may walk for blocks without seeing a public trash can. Why? Because people are expected to take their trash home. When the rules get absurd. Daniel once tried to throw away a used umbrella during typhoon season. Emmy stopped him. That's oversized waste. You need a special sticker. He thought she was joking. She wasn't. In Japan, throwing out a broken umbrella requires a fee, sometimes 200 to 500 yen, a pre-purchase sticker, and a scheduled pickup. Reflection. Trash in Japan isn't just trash, it's a daily test of social awareness. Daniel's confusion that morning wasn't just about cans and cardboard. It was about understanding that order is enforced not through confrontation, but through shame. Through glares, notes, and silence. And maybe, in a country as dense and organized as Japan, it has to be that way. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 3, No dancing after midnight. Explore the once enforced Japanese no dancing law that shut down clubs, arrested DJs, and shocked visitors, and why this moral panic still lingers in nightlife districts. Shall I continue with Section 3? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is Section 3 of your cultural analysis. Section 3, No dancing after midnight. In Japan, even joy once had a curfew. It was a Friday night in Osaka's Amerikamura district. Streetlights flickered over painted alleys and vintage shops. Music drifted from second-floor bars. On the fourth floor of a neon-lit building, DJ Ayaka was spinning deep house to a floor of swaying bodies. Then, at 12:17 a.m., the music stopped. The lights came up. The crowd froze. 3 officers from the Osaka Prefectural Police walked calmly into the club. No one screamed. No one ran. The bouncers simply nodded. The officers approached the DJ booth and held out a document. Violation of the Entertainment Business Act. Operating a dance venue without proper license. Dancing after midnight, prohibited. A law that silenced the beat. What shocks many foreigners is that until recently, it was technically illegal to dance in clubs in Japan after midnight, even in Tokyo or Osaka. And even more surprisingly, this law wasn't from the 1980s or 1990s. It dated all the way back to 1948. After World War II, Japan was undergoing American occupation and a moral restructuring. Dancing, especially in dimly lit rooms, was seen as dangerous. Associated with sex work, drinking, and loose behavior, it became regulated under the Fuzoku Igo Totorishimari Ho, the Entertainment Business Control Law. Under this law, any establishment that allowed dancing needed a special license, and even then, they had to close by midnight. Why the rule survived so long? Most Japanese people didn't even know the law existed, until it was enforced. After a series of high-profile club raids in the early 2010s, the rule made international headlines. DJs were arrested. Clubs were shut down. Young people were furious. But older generations supported the crackdown. One city councilman in Osaka said, "If you allow unrestricted dancing, you invite drugs, fights, and foreign influence." To many, it wasn't about dancing, it was about control. Scene, a night that turned sour. Daniel found himself at a bar in Roppongi one night. The music throbbed, the crowd moved, and the drinks were flowing. He asked the bartender, "Why is no one actually dancing?" The bartender smirked. "Because the cops can walk in any second. And if they do, we get shut down. For dancing." Daniel blinked. "You're kidding." He wasn't. Even after Tokyo won the bid for the 2020 Olympics, and tourism surged, the law remained until 2015, a full 67 years after its creation. When the law changed, sort of. After immense public backlash, especially from younger generations and international media, the Japanese government finally revised the law in 2015. Under the updated law, clubs no longer needed a dancing license. If the venue had sufficient lighting, lux ratings were even defined. Dancing was allowed past midnight, if the venue met noise control and visibility standards. Police still retained the right to shut down suspicious activity. So technically, you can now dance legally after midnight. But the shadow of the law still lingers. Many clubs remain cautious. Others pay off-duty police to stay silent. Why this rule mattered? The no dancing after midnight law is a metaphor for how Japan treats freedom versus order. On paper, people are free. But in practice, freedom must be negotiated, through regulation, approval, and institutional trust. In Western countries, dancing is self-expression. In Japan, it was once a controlled activity, a privilege granted by the state. Reflection. Daniel walked past a closed club in Osaka and saw a sign on the door. "We're closed due to compliance with city ordinances. Thank you for your understanding." He thought about how joy, spontaneous, loud, messy joy, had to be regulated, filtered through forms and approvals. In Japan, even dancing had to follow the rules. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 4, Tattoos and Onsen. Why having a tattoo can get you banned from public baths, pools, and beaches in Japan, and how a deep-rooted fear of the Yakuza still influences body politics. Shall I continue with Section 4? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is Section 4 of your cultural analysis. Section 4, Tattoos and Onsen. Ink in Japan isn't art. It's a warning. The steam rose like ghosts from the water's surface. The onsen in Hakone was quiet, almost reverent. Daniel had been waiting for this moment all week, to soak in the natural spring, to relax in the sacred stillness of Japanese bathing culture. He stripped down, showered as instructed, and stepped into the bath. That's when it happened. The old man across from him stared. Another man got out of the water, not hurriedly, but purposefully. A young woman collecting towels paused. Then the attendant appeared. She bowed low. "I'm very sorry, sir. We cannot allow tattoos in the bath. Please leave." Daniel blinked. But it's just a small one. A crane. It's Japanese. She bowed again. Even so, we cannot make exceptions. Tattoos in the West versus Japan. In much of the West, tattoos are fashion statements, personal stories, art. In Japan, tattoos have long been associated with criminality, particularly the Yakuza, Japan's organized crime syndicates. Even a tiny tattoo, a heart on an ankle, a symbol behind the ear, can cause people to assume you're dangerous, rebellious, or antisocial. A history etched in skin. Tattooing in Japan dates back centuries. During the Edo period, criminals were marked with tattoos on their arms or foreheads to identify them, a permanent badge of shame. Later, during the Meiji era, the government outright banned tattoos, considering them uncivilized under Western gaze. The Yakuza adopted full-body tattoos in defiance, turning them into a secret language of allegiance, toughness, and loyalty. Even now, traditional Yakuza members hide their tattoos in public. They are revealed only in private places like saunas or ritual settings. So when an onsen guest walks in with ink, the alarm isn't aesthetic, it's historical. It's fear. Real consequences in public life. In Japan today, tattoos can get you banned from onsens, hot springs. Refused entry to gyms, pools, beaches. Denied job interviews, especially in customer-facing roles. Asked to cover up in hotels, theme parks, even some restaurants. A sign Daniel saw posted near the entrance of a Sapporo public bathhouse read, "No tattoos. No exceptions. Please protect the peaceful environment." The tourist trap. This law, or rather, this unwritten rule, catches many tourists by surprise. It's not illegal to have a tattoo in Japan, but it is culturally stigmatized to the point of exclusion. Some businesses offer tattoo cover stickers at reception. Others only accept foreign guests with a passport and a signature promising good behavior. But many simply refuse. One Australian tourist wrote online, "I was traveling with my Japanese friend. He could go into the bath. I couldn't. I've never felt more foreign in my life." Changing attitudes. Slowly. The 2020 Tokyo Olympics, later delayed to 2021, spurred some cultural softening. With an influx of international tourists, local governments began encouraging facilities to be more flexible. The Japan Tourism Agency even released guidelines encouraging onsen to accept tattooed foreign guests, especially when the tattoos are clearly not gang-related. But these are just recommendations, not laws. The final decision rests with individual owners, many of whom are elderly, conservative, and risk-averse. Scene: a hidden compromise. After being turned away, Daniel walked out toward the edge of the mountain town. Emmy, who had arrived later, led him to a private family bath, small, walled off, reservable by the hour. Here, no one judged. No one stared. Just silence and steam. He soaked, watching the water ripple across the crane on his shoulder. A Japanese symbol, rejected in its homeland. Reflection. In Japan, it's not just about what you express, it's about what that expression represents in the collective memory. Tattoos may be art to the West. But to Japan, they're a shadow. A symbol of rebellion, secrecy, and crime. Daniel understood now. In this country, the body is not yours alone. It's part of the space you share with others. And in that space, history leaves marks far deeper than ink. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 5, you must carry ID at all times. Why every foreigner in Japan is required by law to carry their residence card or passport, and what happens when you don't have it during a random police stop. Shall I continue with Section 5? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is Section 5 of your cultural analysis. Section 5. You must carry ID at all times. In Japan, the law doesn't ask who you are. It asks if you can prove it. It was late afternoon in Ueno Park. Sunlight filtered through the ginkgo leaves as Daniel strolled past the fountains, sipping a matcha latte and watching families take selfies near the pond. He had just finished a museum visit and was heading to the station when a man in a gray windbreaker stepped into his path. Suma Mason. May I see your ID? Daniel blinked. The man wasn't in uniform. No badge. No loud tone. Just calm insistence. Why? Daniel asked. I'm with the Metropolitan Police. Random check. Daniel patted his pockets. No passport. He had left it in the Airbnb safe. Emmy had said it was safer that way. The man's tone didn't change. You are required to carry it at all times. Please come with me. The Gaijin card. By Japanese law, all foreigners over the age of 16 must carry their Zairyu card, residence card, or passport with them at all times. This isn't a recommendation. It's a legal obligation. The law stems from the Immigration Control and Refugee Recognition Act and is enforced quietly, but firmly. Failure to show ID can lead to detention, police station questioning, fines up to 200,000 yen. In rare cases, deportation. Even short-term tourists must carry their physical passport, not a copy, not a scan. Originals only. Scene, quiet policing. Police in Japan operate under a different code than in many Western countries. They are not confrontational. They don't draw weapons or raise their voice. But they are thorough. They perform random ID checks in parks, train stations, entertainment districts, often targeting foreigners or those who stand out. Daniel asked the officer, "What did I do wrong?" The officer shook his head. Nothing. It's just a routine ID verification. Daniel wasn't arrested. He was taken to the Koban police box, waited 45 minutes while his identity was verified through the embassy, and was politely warned, "Next time, carry your ID." Why the law exists. Japan is a homogeneous society with a deep-rooted desire for order and predictability. Foreigners, particularly in Tokyo and Osaka, are growing in number, but not necessarily in integration. The government sees ID checks as a necessary tool to track visa overstays, prevent illegal work, manage residence permits, monitor criminal activity. But there's also an uncomfortable truth. Foreigners are often assumed to be outsiders, and treated with suspicion until proven otherwise. Controversies and complaints. Many expats and tourists have shared their experiences online. I was stopped in Shibuya just for taking photos. I'm a teacher, married to a Japanese woman, and I still get ID checked once a month. My white friends get stopped more often than my Asian-looking friends. These stories raise uncomfortable questions. Are ID checks really random? Or are they a quiet form of racial profiling? Police departments deny profiling. But the perception persists. Why locals don't push back? In many Western countries, being stopped without cause is a civil rights issue. People film officers. They argue. In Japan, this rarely happens. Why? Because Japanese citizens are not required to carry ID. Foreigners are. And foreigners know. Arguing with Japanese police is like arguing with a stone. Polite. Unmoving. Final. A legal but invisible rule. There's no public campaign reminding tourists to carry their passport. No signs. No airport announcements. Yet the law stands. One Canadian visitor posted, "I only found out about the rule after I was detained for 2 hours in Osaka. My passport was locked in the hotel room. Never again." Reflection. As Daniel left the Koban, passport now safely in his pocket, he felt something odd, not anger, not fear, but displacement. It wasn't about guilt. He hadn't broken any moral rule. He simply didn't fit the system. In Japan, belonging is proven by papers. And if you can't show them, then you don't belong, at least, not in that moment. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 6, reporting dead bodies is mandatory. Why finding a corpse in Japan is a legal responsibility, and what happens if you walk away. Shall I continue with section 6? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is section 6 of your cultural analysis. Section 6, reporting dead bodies is mandatory. In Japan, silence in the face of death can be a crime. It was just after dawn in the backstreets of Osaka's Minami district. Daniel had taken a wrong turn after a morning run, the sky still amber with the sun barely awake. That's when he saw it, a man lying beneath a vending machine, still as concrete. He hesitated. Was he asleep? Drunk? Hurt? Daniel crouched, called out, no answer. He reached out to shake the man's shoulder, but before his hand made contact, a door behind him slid open. A delivery man stepped out, caught sight of the scene, and immediately reached for his phone. Call the police, he told Daniel flatly. Not, check him. Not, wait. Call. Now. A quiet rule about death. In Japan, if you discover a dead body and fail to report it, you may be committing a crime. According to Article 60 of the Act on Handling of Dead Bodies, all citizens and non-citizens are legally required to report any corpse or suspected death immediately to the authorities. It doesn't matter if you didn't know the person. It doesn't matter if you're just passing by. Silence can lead to criminal negligence or even obstruction of justice. The legal rationale. Japan has some of the strictest systems for death registration and autopsy in the world. Every death must be accounted for, whether natural, accidental, or criminal. The police treat unreported deaths with extreme seriousness because Japan has one of the highest suicide rates among developed nations. There is a long-standing fear of lonely deaths, kodakushi. Unreported deaths can signal foul play, abuse, or abandonment. Failure to report is not simply a social error, it becomes a breach of collective duty. Scene, kodakushi, the lonely death. In Tokyo alone, thousands of people die alone each year, often in tiny apartments with no next of kin. Property managers hire specialized cleaning companies to remove remains, furniture, and bodily residue. Entire businesses exist just to clean death apartments. Daniel later saw a flyer taped to a Tokyo bus stop. If you haven't seen your neighbor in days, check in. Report if necessary. Don't let them die alone. It was a jarring reminder that in Japan, the duty of care does not end at death, it begins there. Foreigners caught in the system. There have been cases of tourists discovering unconscious people in parks or alleys and walking away, thinking they were drunk. In several instances, surveillance footage caught them leaving. Authorities tracked them down. They were charged with failure to report a medical emergency or possible death. Even if the person later survived, not calling was considered criminally negligent. Daniel asked Emmy, but what if I honestly thought he was just passed out? She replied, you're not expected to know. You're expected to act. A culture of responsibility and shame. Reporting a dead body isn't just about law. It's about protecting social order, respecting the deceased, and ensuring closure. In Japan, failing to report a death is seen as cold. Involving the police is not drama, it's duty. Avoidance is viewed as cowardice or selfishness. And even when someone does report a death, they may be interviewed repeatedly, asked to reconstruct the discovery, and, in rare cases, treated as a suspect until cleared. The emotional weight. Daniel did call. The police arrived within minutes, and it turned out the man was alive, a homeless resident suffering from heat exhaustion. He was taken to a hospital. But the experience stayed with Daniel. I didn't grow up in a place where calling the cops was the first instinct, he told Emmy later. In New York, we walk past people on sidewalks all the time. It's survival. Emmy nodded. But here, you're part of the neighborhood the moment you step into it. That includes its burdens. Reflection. In Japan, discovering death is not a private shock, it's a public duty. Failing to respond is not just immoral. It's criminal. Daniel understood now that the system wasn't designed to frighten. It was designed to ensure that no one disappears silently. That even in a society built on silence, death cannot, and must not, go unspoken. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 7, no noise on trains. Why even whispering on public transportation in Japan can draw angry glances, and how silence is enforced not by law, but by collective pressure. Shall I continue with Section 7? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is Section 7 of your cultural analysis. Section 7, no noise on trains. In Japan, the silence of a train speaks louder than words. The Tokyo Metro. Morning rush hour. Daniel stood shoulder to shoulder with dozens of commuters in a packed train car gliding through the Marunouchi line. Nobody spoke. Nobody made eye contact. The only sounds were the soft hum of the engine, the rustle of newspapers, and the synthetic voice announcing the next station. Daniel's phone buzzed. He pulled it out and answered instinctively. Hey. Yeah, I'm on the train. Probably 10 minutes. All around him, heads shifted. Not fast. Not glaring. But just enough. One man slowly closed his newspaper. Another woman adjusted her mask and looked down. A teenage girl in a school uniform turned her head toward the window. Daniel finished the call quickly. No one said anything. But the silence felt sharper. The culture of train etiquette. In Japan, silence on public transportation is not a law. There are no officers ready to fine you for talking. But the social pressure is so strong, so finely tuned, that even a whisper can feel like a shout. Signs in every carriage politely instruct. Please refrain from talking on your phone. Set your device to silent mode. Be mindful of noise. Let's make everyone's ride comfortable. This isn't optional. It's expected. Why silence matters. Japanese trains are lifelines. Millions use them daily to commute, travel, or study. But more than transportation, trains serve as temporary sanctuaries, the few moments of peace before or after work. For many riders, the train is where they nap, or prepare mentally for meetings, or simply retreat into headphones, books, or blank stares. Noise intrudes on that sacred stillness. In a society that values social harmony, not disturbing others is the baseline expectation, especially in public spaces. Scene, when a rule is broken. One afternoon, Daniel boarded the Yamanote line with Emmy. A group of foreign tourists entered the same car, laughing, chatting, carrying shopping bags from Harajuku. Within minutes, subtle chaos unfolded. An elderly man cleared his throat. A woman moved to the next car at the next station. A high school boy recorded a short video, not of the tourists, but of the awkward reactions around them. After the group left, a Japanese salaryman near Daniel muttered, "Shogunai na, it can't be helped." Emmy leaned over to Daniel. They weren't angry. Just disappointed. Embarrassed. That's worse. No confrontation, just distance. What makes this rule so unique in Japan is how it's enforced without words. In the West, someone might ask you to quiet down. Or shout back. In Japan, people will avoid eye contact. They may stand and move cars. They might sigh audibly, or glance sharply, or simply endure, but remember. Daniel once asked, "Why doesn't anyone say something?" Emmy responded, "Because if they do, they're breaking the harmony, too." Phones and pacemakers. For years, train announcements told riders to turn off phones near priority seating because electromagnetic waves might interfere with pacemakers. Even though modern science has mostly debunked this risk, the social memory of that warning still shapes behavior today. People automatically put their phones on silent mode and text instead of talk, out of respect, not compliance. When foreigners get it wrong. Many tourists are unaware of the rule and talk freely. Some are met with stares. Others are quietly recorded and posted online, on forums or blogs, criticized as noisy gaijin, urusa gaijin. The term isn't always malicious, but it carries a sting of separation. A reminder that, in Japan, belonging means knowing how to disappear into the group. Reflection. Later that week, Daniel rode the train alone. He didn't make a sound. He watched how people held their breath between stations. How even coughs were muffled with sleeves. How the city, so loud above ground, dissolved into quiet as soon as the doors closed. He realized the silence wasn't emptiness. It was discipline. A shared agreement. In that silence, he wasn't being controlled. He was being trusted to protect the peace. And so, for once, he didn't scroll. He didn't talk. He simply stood, still, and listened. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 8, bicycling with an umbrella is illegal. Why riding a bicycle while holding an umbrella in Japan is a ticketable offense, and how safety culture turns everyday habits into regulated behavior. Shall I continue with Section 8? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is Section 8 of your cultural analysis. Section 8, bicycling with an umbrella is illegal. In Japan, balance isn't just physical, it's legal. It was raining lightly in Kyoto. Not the kind of rain that soaks your socks, just a whisper of mist that clung to rooftops and temple tiles. Daniel watched as office workers passed by, all with umbrellas, black, transparent, neatly held with uniform discipline. Then he noticed something odd. Not a single person on a bicycle had an umbrella open. In New York, Daniel had often balanced an umbrella in one hand while pedaling to work, dodging traffic and puddles. Here, every cyclist wore a hood or plastic poncho. Even the delivery rider from Uber Eats had a full rain suit, his bike frame shiny with droplets. Why don't people just ride with an umbrella? He asked Emmy. She blinked. Because it's illegal. Yes, really, it's against the law. In Japan, riding a bicycle while holding an umbrella, even a small one, even in light rain, is a violation of the Road Traffic Act. Specifically, it falls under Article 71, operating a bicycle in a manner that obstructs safe driving. Violators can face fines up to 50,000 yen. Warnings or tickets from local police. In some prefectures, mandatory traffic safety classes. And it's not just umbrellas. Other common violations include riding with one hand, e.g., holding a phone. Using headphones while cycling. Cycling at night without a front light. Carrying passengers on non-approved bikes. Japan doesn't see bikes as toys or casual transport. It sees them as vehicles, and expects vehicle-like behavior. Scene: caught in the rain. One afternoon, Daniel tried it. The clouds opened unexpectedly. Without thinking, he opened his umbrella and rode back toward his guest house. Within minutes, a police officer at a crosswalk waved him down. "Sumimasen," the officer said with a slight bow. "That's not allowed." Daniel was stunned. "I'm just trying to stay dry." The officer smiled, but didn't relent. "It's dangerous. For others. Please close it. No ticket. Just a warning." But Daniel felt the stares from others around him. Not anger, just disapproval. That familiar Japanese silence. He closed the umbrella, pedaled home in the rain, and later bought a poncho from Don Quixote. The safety mindset. Japan's obsession with preventing accidents drives much of its daily regulation. Even if something seems safe to you, the law considers edge cases, what-if scenarios, risks to others. This is why crossing the street while looking at your phone can get you scolded. Elderly people are ticketed for riding without helmets. Children as young as 3 wear fluorescent vests to kindergarten. The logic is simple. If you get hurt, someone else has to clean up the mess. And that burden violates social harmony. When tourists break the rules. Many travelers to Japan post videos of riding bikes with umbrellas in places like Nara or rural Kyoto. The comments often reveal the cultural divide. "We do this all the time in my country. Japan is so uptight. It's just rain, chill out." But what seems casual elsewhere can be deeply out of place in Japan, where risk is minimized through meticulous control. The real shock for most foreigners isn't the rule, it's how consistently people follow it. Bicycle laws are local and serious. Bicycle regulations vary by prefecture, and many have added strict rules over the past decade due to a rise in bicycle-related accidents, increased use of e-bikes, elderly riders and pedestrian injuries. In Tokyo, for example, violating bike laws can result in criminal charges if injuries are caused. Japan treats shared public space with reverence. Whether it's a train, a sidewalk, or a narrow alleyway, the expectation is move predictably. Take up as little space as possible. Don't endanger others. Holding an umbrella while cycling? That's chaos waiting to happen, and Japan doesn't tolerate chaos. Reflection. Daniel stood in the rain the next day, watching a mother ride past with her child on the back of her bike. She wore a full rain cape, gloves, and helmet. Not a single drip fell onto the child's hooded head. It wasn't about getting wet. It was about keeping control. In Japan, rain is not a nuisance to be resisted. It is a condition to be accounted for, prepared for, respected. Daniel smiled, zipped up his poncho, and walked his bike through the puddles. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 9. Walking while smoking is prohibited. How Japan turned casual sidewalk smoking into a fined offense, and why designated smoking zones are now a symbol of social order. Shall I continue with Section 9? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is Section 9 of your cultural analysis. Section 9. Walking while smoking is prohibited. In Japan, even your smoke must follow the rules. Shibuya Crossing. Neon flickered against 1,000 black umbrellas. The scent of grilled meat wafted from an izakaya. Daniel had just stepped out of a ramen shop when he saw a man light a cigarette. But the man didn't walk. He stood silently, barely moving, inside a small glass enclosure on the sidewalk, next to a glowing blue sign. Smoking area, please smoke here. Around him, several others puffed away in orderly silence, standing like statues inside the designated cube. Daniel took out a cigarette and started to light it as he walked. A hand tapped his shoulder. A uniformed community officer bowed slightly. "Sir, please refrain. No walking while smoking. There's a smoking area just behind you. The law that fines behavior." In most Japanese cities, smoking while walking in public spaces is banned, not by national law, but by municipal ordinance. Violators can face fines ranging from 1,000 yen to 2,000 yen, roughly $10 to $20 USD. Verbal warnings. In tourist-heavy zones, photo-based evidence and mailed citations. The purpose? Protect others from secondhand smoke, burns, and litter. Especially children. Why it feels so strict. Daniel couldn't believe it. In New York, people smoke walking down the street all the time. Emmy replied, "Here, we think about what happens if someone walks past a child at eye level, with a lit cigarette." In narrow alleys, crowded sidewalks, or train platforms, a dangling cigarette can become a weapon. Accidental burns are not rare. Lawsuits have been filed. So instead of banning smoking entirely, Japan controls where and how it's allowed. Designated smoking areas. All over Japanese cities, even in the busiest urban centers, you'll find enclosed smoking zones. Usually glass or metal fenced-in cubes. Located outside train stations, malls, parks, or office buildings. Equipped with ashtrays and sometimes vending machines. These areas are treated with a surprising level of respect. People don't linger. No shouting. No loitering. Once finished, smokers bow slightly, toss their cigarette in the proper slot, and exit. It's not just about obeying the law. It's about protecting the shared space. Tourist confusion. In 2023, a popular travel blogger posted a video of himself smoking while walking in Dotonbori. The video went viral, not because of the act, but because of the flood of angry Japanese comments underneath. So selfish. Foreigners don't respect our culture. Why didn't he just use the smoking area? The blogger later apologized and added subtitles to the video, educating viewers about the rule. Tokyo's no smoking streets. In areas like Shinjuku, Ginza, and Akihabara, local governments have installed signs directly on the pavement. No smoking. No smoking while walking. Fines apply. These aren't suggestions. In districts with high foot traffic, smoking patrol officers quietly enforce the ordinance. Daniel asked Emmy, "They have patrols just for smokers?" She nodded. Yes. And if you're caught, even as a tourist, you're expected to pay on the spot. Smoking culture, not erased, just contained. Japan still has a significant number of smokers. Cigarette vending machines are everywhere. Older men in bars still puff openly. But the difference is placement. Many restaurants have smoking and non-smoking sections, though this is slowly changing. Entire buildings are labeled smoking permitted or smoke-free. Office buildings have ventilated smoking rooms on designated floors. It's not about eradicating the behavior, it's about preventing it from intruding on others. Reflection. Daniel stood in the small smoking booth outside Shinjuku Station. It felt like a glass confession box, a place where vice could exist, as long as it followed the rules. He looked out at the crowd rushing by. Not one person smoked while walking. Not one flicked a cigarette onto the street. He realized then. Japan doesn't suppress impulse, it redirects it. Want to smoke? You can. But only where society allows it. Only where it won't leave a mark on someone else. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 10, noise complaints equals police visits. Why simply playing music too loud in your apartment can summon a visit from police, and how Japanese living spaces turn volume into a communal issue. Shall I continue with section 10? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is section 10 of your cultural analysis. Section 10, noise complaints equals police visits. In Japan, even a speaker turned too high can become a criminal offense. Tokyo, 9:42 p.m. Daniel sat in his Airbnb apartment, a tidy one-room unit near Nakameguro. A glass of plum wine in one hand, jazz flowing softly from his phone speaker. He just discovered a local playlist and was letting himself unwind after a long day navigating shrines and sushi counters. Then, a knock. Not the building manager. Not a neighbor. Two uniformed police officers stood at the door. We received a report about noise from this unit. May we speak with you? Daniel blinked. Noise? It's not even that loud. One officer smiled politely. Even so, someone reported discomfort. May we come in? The paper-thin walls of Japan. Most Japanese apartments, especially those built before the 2000s, have extremely thin walls, often made with lightweight materials like wood or aluminum framing. You can hear footsteps from above. Conversations next door come through like whispers in your ear. Even the sound of a washing machine can provoke complaints. Despite this, buildings often have no insulation for soundproofing. Why? Because the burden isn't on the structure, it's on the tenant. You are expected to self-regulate your noise, and above all, not disturb the peace. Japanese law and noise nuisance. Under Japan's civil code and local ordinances, persistent noise that disturbs neighbors may be considered a public nuisance, kogai/. A violation of the local public nuisance control ordinance. Grounds for legal complaint, eviction, or police intervention. Importantly, a complaint doesn't need to prove decibel levels. The feeling of disturbance is often enough. Daniel learned that the tenant above had texted the landlord, who called the building manager, who, trying to avoid confrontation, called the police. Scene, a whispered society. Later that week, Daniel attended a small dinner party at an expat friend's apartment in Koenji. 5 people, low voices, light laughter. Around 10 p.m., someone reminded, SHH, thin walls. At 10:30 p.m., a neighbor knocked on the wall, not hard. Just 2 taps. Silence followed. Conversation became whispers. The host apologized repeatedly. It was as if a line had been crossed, even though no law was technically broken. Why volume is a social offense? In Japan, disturbing the peace is not about intention, it's about impact. Your neighbor might be trying to sleep. A baby might be napping. An elderly tenant may perceive the sound as aggressive. So playing music, talking loudly, or even watching TV without headphones late at night becomes an intrusion into someone else's home, through paper-thin walls. How foreigners get trapped. Many foreigners find themselves facing noise complaints within weeks of arriving. Common triggers. Talking on the phone after 10 p.m. Playing guitar or instruments indoors. Laughing loudly during video calls. dragging furniture across the floor, watching Netflix on speakers past midnight. In Daniel's case, it was simply a playlist played without headphones. He later asked Emmy, "So, should I just never play music?" She shrugged. "Play it. Just use headphones. Or keep it so low you can barely hear it." What happens when the police are involved? Japanese police don't arrive with sirens. They knock. They bow. They explain gently. But they do write reports. Your name, passport number, and reason for the visit are documented. Multiple visits may be reported to your landlord, affect your visa renewal, lead to eviction notices, especially in Airbnb or guest housing. It doesn't escalate dramatically, but it never truly disappears either. Reflection. Back in his apartment, Daniel listened, not to music, but to the building. The neighbor's faucet. The distant hum of a fridge. A muffled cough from next door. He realized he wasn't living alone. He was living beside others, whose walls were thin, whose patience was quiet, and whose complaints came not through arguments, but through formal channels and quiet reprimands. He turned on his music again. But this time, through earbuds. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 11. No public displays of affection. Why kissing, hugging, or touching in public is frowned upon in Japan, and how emotional privacy shapes everyday interactions. Shall I continue with section 11? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is section 11 of your cultural analysis. Section 11. No public displays of affection. In Japan, love is something you show, by not showing it. Sunday afternoon. The sakura trees in Yoyogi Park were in full bloom, petals falling like snow over picnic blankets and camera shutters. Daniel and Emmy strolled beneath the pink canopies, the scent of spring thick in the air. Daniel, feeling the moment, reached for Emmy's hand. She gently pulled it away. Not harshly. Not coldly. Just, quietly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Not here." Daniel blinked. "But why? We're just holding hands." She glanced around, young families, older couples, teenagers in uniforms. No one else is. And she was right. The unwritten ban on public affection. In Japan, public displays of affection, PDA, kissing, hugging, hand-holding, or even prolonged touching, are widely considered inappropriate in public spaces. There is no national law against it. But socially, it's frowned upon. It draws stares. It may cause discomfort for those around you. And in some cases, staff may ask you to stop, especially in formal environments like train stations, shrines, or schools. Even couples in love are expected to express themselves privately, behind doors, in letters, or through small, quiet gestures. Why affection is a private matter. Japanese culture emphasizes emotional restraint, group comfort over individual expression, nonverbal communication. Romantic affection, like sadness or anger, is seen as a personal feeling, not something to be imposed on the shared public space. Daniel once asked, "But what about weddings? Don't people kiss then?" Emmy smiled. "Not always. Some couples just bow. Or smile. Scene, when foreigners go too far." At Shibuya Crossing, Daniel once saw a foreign couple kiss passionately as the crowd moved around them. A woman nearby visibly flinched. A man looked down. No one confronted the couple. No one said a word. But the discomfort spread like a ripple, a subtle tension in the air. Later, Emmy explained. It's not that people hate affection, but they expect it to be shared in the right place. Like a conversation in a quiet room, not shouted across a train. Historical roots of modesty. Japan's modesty around affection dates back centuries. During the Edo period, expressions of love were limited to poetry, fan gestures, or calligraphy. In traditional theater, couples rarely touched. Love was implied, not acted out. Even today, many parents don't say, "I love you," to their children. They show it through care, sacrifice, and silent support. This doesn't mean Japanese people feel less love, they express it differently. Modern generations and cultural shift. Younger couples in places like Harajuku or Osaka's Amerikamura are slowly pushing boundaries. Hand-holding is becoming more common. Some couples take couple selfies with matching outfits. In cities, you may even spot a quick hug or light kiss. But even so, discretion is king. Most will still let go of each other's hands when entering train stations, department stores, elevators, anywhere quiet and enclosed. Tourist reactions. Foreigners often report feeling awkward or cold-shouldered when they try to show affection in Japan. "I tried to kiss my partner goodbye at the airport and people stared at us," one American traveler wrote. "It made me feel like we were doing something wrong." Another posted, "My Japanese girlfriend never holds my hand in public. But she always texts me Otsukaresama after work. That's her love language." Reflection. As Daniel and Emmy sat beneath the cherry blossoms, she reached into her bag and handed him something, a folded paper crane. Inside was a note. "Thank you for walking with me today." No kiss. No hug. But something deeper. In that moment, Daniel realized that in Japan, affection wasn't about touch. It was about attention. Being present. Quiet. Thoughtful. He smiled. And for once, he didn't reach for her hand. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 12, you can be fined for being weird. Discover Japan's anti-nuisance ordinances, vague laws that punish behaviors deemed unpleasant, and how foreigners unknowingly cross these invisible boundaries. Shall I continue with Section 12? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is Section 12 of your cultural analysis. Section 12, you can be fined for being weird. In Japan, you don't have to break the law to be punished, just break the mood. The street performer in Shinjuku stood frozen on a milk crate. His face was painted white, his suit bright red. A crowd gathered as he slowly moved, robotically, to the rhythm of distant jazz spilling from a nearby cafe. Then came the whistle. Two uniformed officers stepped forward. They didn't shout. They didn't arrest him. They simply handed the man a paper. He read it. Folded. Bowed. And left. What happened? Daniel asked, watching from the edge of the crowd. Emmy replied softly, they told him he was a nuisance. The anti-nuisance ordinance. In Japan, nearly every prefecture enforces what's known as the anti-nuisance ordinance, laws that prohibit behavior considered to disturb the public, cause discomfort, provoke anxiety or unease, disrupt social order. These laws are intentionally vague, allowing police to act based on perception, not just clear infractions. Actions that fall under this category can include staring for too long at someone, wearing offensive or strange clothing, standing in certain places too long, loud laughing or yelling, performing or preaching in public without a permit, walking behind someone for an extended distance. Yes, even walking too closely behind a stranger can be interpreted as stalker-like behavior under the ordinance. Scene, misinterpreted intent. One evening in Akihabara, Daniel noticed a foreign tourist dancing in public to music from a Bluetooth speaker. He was energetic, harmless, filming a TikTok. But within minutes, a police officer approached and gestured for him to stop. The tourist protested. "I'm just having fun. I'm not hurting anyone." The officer remained calm but firm. "It's disturbing others," he said. And in Japan, that's enough. Japan's social philosophy of maiwaku. The concept of maiwaku, causing trouble or inconvenience to others, lies at the heart of Japanese social norms. In Japanese society, your freedom ends the moment it touches someone else's discomfort. This creates a system where even harmless behaviors can become problematic if they attract too much attention, make others feel uneasy, seem out of place in a given setting. There are no objective rules. Just a silent agreement to not stand out. Foreigners and weirdness. Foreign visitors often break these rules without realizing it. Wearing cosplay outside an anime event. Singing to themselves on a quiet street. Standing too long on a train platform. Making eye contact with strangers for too long. In some cases, they may be approached by police officers, train staff, security guards, or even concerned citizens. They won't say, "You're doing something illegal." They'll say, "Please don't disturb others." Gray areas and soft policing. Japan's policing is subtle, rarely aggressive, but extremely effective. Most encounters don't end in fines or arrests. Instead, the threat of shame, public embarrassment, or a formal warning is enough to correct behavior. Even something like playing guitar in a park, wearing a full-body animal costume in a mall, speaking loudly in an elevator, can trigger intervention, not because of danger, but because it breaks the social spell of quiet coexistence. Double standards. Interestingly, some behaviors allowed during festivals or specific events are banned the next day in the same location. Daniel once asked, "How is cosplay allowed at Comiket but not in Harajuku the next morning?" Emmy replied, "Because permission is temporary. When the crowd agrees it's okay, it's okay. When they don't, it becomes maiwaku." Reflection. Daniel began to see the city differently. Where he once saw freedom of expression, he now saw careful choreography, a kind of invisible script everyone followed. Being weird wasn't dangerous, but it was disruptive. And disruption wasn't tolerated lightly. He thought of the man in red. The crowd had clapped. The performance was mesmerizing. But in Japan, applause means nothing if the air feels uneasy. And so, the man bowed, packed his paint, and disappeared, as silently as he had arrived. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 13, Apartment contracts forbid friends sleeping over. Discover how landlords in Japan enforce strict, no guest, policies, and why inviting a friend to stay the night could violate your lease. Shall I continue with Section 13? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is Section 13 of your cultural analysis. Section 13, Apartment contracts forbid friends sleeping over. In Japan, the guest you invite becomes everyone's concern. The apartment was small but spotless, a 20 square meter unit in Nakano, with sliding doors, a compact bathroom, and a balcony just wide enough to hang laundry. Daniel's friend, Marcus, had flown in from Singapore. It was late, hotels were full, and the plan was simple: crash on the floor for the night and head to Kyoto in the morning. At midnight, Daniel laid out a futon, tossed an extra towel over, and said, "No one will care. It's just one night." The next morning, there was a letter in the mailbox, a formal notice from the property manager. Unregistered guest observed entering the premises. Please adhere to your lease agreement. No overnight visitors without prior approval. Daniel was stunned. No one had knocked. No one had spoken. But someone had noticed. The strict guest policy. In Japan, many rental agreements explicitly forbid overnight guests, especially in monthly apartments, monthly mansions, share houses, foreign guest housing, company-leased accommodations. Even in private long-term rentals, lease clauses may state, tenants shall not permit unregistered individuals to reside or sleep on premises, even temporarily. This isn't merely about rent. It's about security, liability, and order. Why it's enforced. Safety, landlords and neighbors expect to know who lives in the building. A stranger in the hallway can raise alarm. Noise control, Japanese apartments are often thin-walled. A guest increases the risk of late-night conversations, extra footsteps, unfamiliar voices. Legal and licensing concerns, landlords must report how many people live in each unit for fire safety, tax, and insurance reasons. Community trust, residents are expected to live quietly, respectfully, and predictably. Surprise guests break that rhythm. Scene, the neighbor's concern. Daniel later learned from Emmy that someone had quietly observed Marcus entering late at night, a woman from the floor below, who notified the manager. Not because she disliked Daniel. Not because she hated foreigners. But because she didn't recognize the visitor, and in Japan, that's reason enough to act. If something happened, a break-in, a fire, a theft, they wouldn't know who he was, Emmy explained. Cultural assumptions about guests. In Japan, home is considered deeply private, not a social venue, not a casual place to host, and certainly not a space to house unapproved visitors. Even among locals. Many don't invite friends over. Sleepovers are uncommon past childhood. Socializing happens in public third spaces, cafes, izakaya, karaoke rooms. To have someone sleep over, particularly someone who doesn't live there, is considered a significant disruption of routine and privacy. Foreigners breaking the rule. Many foreigners renting monthly apartments or share houses misunderstand this rule. Common missteps include letting friends crash for a night, hosting visiting family members without notice, inviting romantic partners over, renting under one name but hosting multiple rotating friends. In several documented cases, tenants were evicted without warning, reported to immigration officials, blacklisted from using certain rental agencies again. Surveillance without surveillance. Unlike Western countries, where enforcement requires door cameras or landlord intrusion, Japan uses social observation. Neighbors watch patterns. Building managers walk the halls. Cleaning staff notice extra shoes, bags, or toothbrushes. It's quiet, but thorough. Exceptions. Rarely. In some buildings, especially in international areas like Roppongi or Shibuya, landlords may allow registered guests, but only with advance notice, and often only if paperwork is filed. In share houses, some allow guests in common spaces but not overnight. Others allow a one-night-per-month rule, but still expect documentation. Reflection. Daniel apologized to the building manager and submitted a written acknowledgement. Marcus booked a capsule hotel for the rest of his stay. That night, Daniel sat alone in his apartment and realized something. In Japan, you don't just rent a room. You rent your place within the ecosystem of the building. And that ecosystem values stability over spontaneity. It wasn't about permission. It was about belonging, and that meant following rules you'd never even thought to ask about. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 14, loud music equals eviction. Explore how simply playing music, even at modest volume, can result in written warnings, fines, or formal eviction from your Japanese apartment. Shall I continue with section 14? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is section 14 of your cultural analysis. Section 14, loud music equals eviction. In Japan, your speaker can say more about you than your words ever will. It was a Sunday afternoon, golden light spilling into Daniel's apartment. He had just discovered an old jazz record from a Tokyo flea market, pressed in 1973, a collector's dream. He placed it gently on the turntable, set the volume low, and let the warm hum fill the space. By Western standards, it was peaceful. In Japan, it was a warning. The next day, another letter arrived in his mailbox. We have received a complaint from a neighboring unit regarding loud music. Please reduce volume immediately. Repeat violations may result in contract termination. Daniel couldn't believe it. He hadn't even turned it up to halfway. The soundless compact. In Japan, sound in residential buildings is not governed solely by decibel readings or quiet hours. It's governed by a cultural contract, one that says, you exist in shared space. Your comfort cannot come at the cost of someone else's. And in that space, music becomes a boundary violation, even when soft, even during the day. Why Japanese buildings are so quiet? Several reasons. Construction materials. Many apartments are made with lightweight wood, steel frames, and thin walls, not soundproofed for Western lifestyles. Cultural norms. Japan favors inwardness, modesty, and invisibility at home. Social harmony. One tenant's relaxation is another tenant's stress. There's also a widespread belief in being considerate without needing to be asked, meaning neighbors won't confront you. They'll just report you anonymously. Scene, the jazz that echoed. Daniel asked Emmy, it wasn't even loud. Doesn't everyone play music? She shook her head. If they do, it's through headphones. Or barely audible. Or only during certain hours. She explained how some apartments in Japan are marketed as sound-friendly, with slightly thicker walls or double-glazed windows, specifically for musicians, streamers, or foreigners, who are assumed to be more expressive. But such buildings are rare, and often more expensive. What happens when you break the sound rule? In most cases, the process is neighbor complaint. Building manager's written warning. Second complaint equals formal notice. Third complaint equals possible eviction or contract penalty. Landlords rarely offer chances to explain or negotiate. The logic is simple. If one person is uncomfortable, the entire system is unstable. Even when your lease doesn't explicitly mention music, it will often contain vague phrases like, avoid disturbing others. Refrain from excessive noise. Maintain good relations with surrounding residents. Musicians have it worse. For musicians, Japan can feel stifling. Practicing violin or piano at home is nearly impossible unless you live in a soundproofed unit. Some students rent hourly practice spaces just to rehearse. Electronic drum kits are common. Real drums? Forget it. Even singing out loud may trigger complaints. There are online support groups for foreign artists in Japan titled, Where Can I Make Noise Without Getting Evicted? Work from Home Culture Clash. The rise of remote work during and after COVID-19 led to more people staying home, and more people noticing what their neighbors sound like. Daniel learned of people being reported for typing loudly on mechanical keyboards, laughing during Zoom calls, taking phone calls in the hallway, exercising indoors with YouTube videos. What used to go unnoticed in daily life now became the soundtrack of intrusion. Reflection. After the warning, Daniel stopped playing music through speakers altogether. He invested in noise-canceling headphones, tiptoed around the apartment, and kept the windows shut. One night, he heard a neighbor's microwave beep. Another time, a dog barked briefly 2 doors down. He realized everyone was living under the same quiet tension, a kind of mutual surveillance rooted not in paranoia, but in preservation. The silence wasn't cold. It was agreement. A shared decision to coexist through restraint. And in that silence, Daniel found himself becoming more Japanese than he'd ever expected. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 15. Social media posts can be criminal. Explore how posting offensive or defamatory content online, even mild insults, can lead to arrest, lawsuits, or criminal charges in Japan's strict digital space. Shall I continue with Section 15? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is Section 15 of your cultural analysis. Section 15. Social media posts can be criminal. In Japan, the internet remembers, and so does the law. Daniel was scrolling Twitter one night, checking messages and local threads. He stumbled across a post from another foreign traveler complaining about a sushi chef being rude and condescending. The tweet had only a few likes, but it included the name of the restaurant and a blurry photo of the chef. 2 days later, the account was suspended. And within the week, the user posted an update. I've been contacted by a lawyer. I might be getting sued. I didn't think a tweet could do that. Daniel blinked. Wait, what? Sued over a tweet? Emmy, reading over his shoulder, nodded solemnly. In Japan, you can't just say whatever you want online. Not without consequences. The digital minefield of Japan. Unlike in the US or many Western countries where free speech is fiercely protected, Japan's approach to online expression is more conservative, more cautious, and more enforceable. You can be criminally or civilly penalized for defamation / meo kison, insults or slander / bujoku, online harassment or cyberbullying / neto chusho, false accusations or rumors. Even truthful statements can be grounds for defamation if they damage someone's reputation without a clear public interest. Real cases, real arrests. Japan has had numerous cases where individuals were arrested for calling a celebrity a derogatory name on Twitter, sued for negative restaurant reviews on Google, charged for mocking influencers or public figures, fined for YouTube comments and meme content. In 2022, a man was convicted for posting a single tweet that referred to a manga artist as ugly and untalented. The penalty? A suspended sentence and legal fees. The Hana Kimura tragedy. In 2020, Hana Kimura, a professional wrestler and cast member on the Netflix show Terrace House, took her own life after enduring months of online harassment. The backlash shook Japan. It led to a national reckoning with cyberbullying, new laws increasing penalties for online insults, expansion of police powers to obtain user data from platforms faster, public awareness campaigns about internet responsibility. What's considered trash talk in other countries is treated as social violence in Japan. Platform responsibility and policing. Japanese law now allows victims to subpoena IP addresses from platforms like Twitter and Instagram. Courts to demand deletion of defamatory content. Police to arrest individuals for even minor offensive posts. Local police units often have a cybercrime division that monitors public forums, social media hashtags, and user-generated platforms. And Japanese platforms themselves, like 5ch or Line, enforce stricter moderation than their Western counterparts. Scene, a joke that backfired. Daniel once tweeted a sarcastic comment about a slow train conductor, tagging the station account and calling the staff robotic. Emmy gently warned him. If that gets picked up, and they think it damages the company's image, they could contact your provider. What? But it's just a joke. Here, intent doesn't matter. The effect does. Daniel deleted the tweet within the hour. Free speech versus collective reputation. In Japanese society, individual expression is respected, as long as it doesn't cause harm to the group. Freedom exists, but it is measured, cautious, heavily contextual. The internet, once thought to be a place of anonymity, is now considered a space shared with your real name, your real reputation, and your real consequences. Reflection. Daniel began to treat his online presence like he treated his public behavior in Japan, carefully, respectfully, and with an awareness that every post was a window into his values. He didn't stop tweeting. But he thought before he shared. He didn't stop commenting. But he asked himself if he'd say it to someone's face, in a country where silence was more powerful than sarcasm. Because in Japan, your digital voice is not just your own. It echoes, legally, socially, and permanently. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 16, renting as a foreigner can be denied. Uncover how Japan's rental market legally allows landlords to reject foreigners, and why even fluent Japanese speakers can be turned away for not fitting in. Shall I continue with section 16? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is section 16 of your cultural analysis. Section 16, renting as a foreigner can be denied. In Japan, even a perfect application can be rejected if you're not the right fit. Daniel had been searching for an apartment in Tokyo for weeks. Fluent in Japanese, with a stable job and good credit, he felt confident. But every rental agency meeting ended with polite refusals. One agent said, "Your paperwork is fine, but the landlord prefers a Japanese tenant." Another whispered, "We've had issues with foreign renters before." Frustrated, Daniel asked Emmy, "Is this legal?" She sighed. "Not officially. But it happens all the time." The unwritten rental barrier. Japan's rental market often excludes foreigners through subtle means known as Japan-only or Japanese-speaking-only policies. Legally, discrimination based on nationality is prohibited by the 2020 Act on the Promotion of Residential Land Leasing and Protection of Lessees. However, landlords and agencies can still demand extra guarantors, require higher deposits, insist on Japanese references, use vague excuses like preference for long-term tenants. The result? Many foreigners feel locked out. Cultural factors behind the policy. Language and communication. Landlords worry about misunderstandings or communication breakdowns. Cultural differences. Different habits around garbage disposal, noise, or contract terms can lead to disputes. Risk aversion. Japan's society favors stability and predictability. Unfamiliarity breeds caution. Guarantor systems. Finding a Japanese guarantor is often mandatory, which is difficult for newcomers. Scene, the guarantor dilemma. Daniel finally found a place, but only after his company agreed to act as his guarantor, promising to cover any unpaid rent or damages. Even then, the landlord warned, "If neighbors complain, we will reconsider." Daniel realized that being foreign was less about your paperwork and more about your neighbor's acceptance. Foreign-friendly alternatives. To combat this, new services have emerged. Foreign-friendly real estate agencies. Companies offering guarantor services without Japanese contacts. Apartment complexes marketed specifically to expats. But these often come at a premium cost, higher deposits, and fewer amenities. Reflection. In Japan, renting is more than a transaction. It's a social contract. Being accepted means not just paying rent, but fitting into a cultural mold, a mold that's invisible but strict. Daniel understood. To live in Japan, you must navigate more than language or laws. You must navigate the unwritten rules of belonging. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 17, Conformity in school uniforms and hair. Explore how Japan enforces strict dress and appearance codes, not just for discipline, but to shape identity and social order. Shall I continue with section 17? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is section 17 of your cultural analysis. Section 17, Conformity in school uniforms and hair. In Japan, uniformity isn't just fashion, it's a way of life. Daniel visited a local high school during a cultural festival. Outside the gates, groups of students posed for photos, crisp white shirts, navy blazers, pleated skirts for girls, and matching trousers for boys. Their hair was dark, neatly trimmed, and mostly natural in color. A few students sported dyed tips or slightly longer hairstyles, but teachers watched closely. Why so strict about hair? Daniel asked Emmy, who accompanied him. She smiled wryly. Because it's about more than hair. It's about discipline and belonging. The power of uniforms. In Japan, school uniforms, siifuku, are ubiquitous, especially from junior high through high school. Uniforms serve to equalize students, erasing economic or social differences. Promote group identity and harmony. Encourage discipline and focus. Reduce distractions or competition based on appearance. Schools often select designs carefully to symbolize their identity and prestige. Strict hair regulations. Hair rules often include prohibition against dyed or bleached hair, limits on hair length for boys and girls, bans on extreme hairstyles or colors, restrictions on accessories and makeup. Teachers conduct regular checks, and students can be asked to cut their hair or remove colors if deemed inappropriate. Why such control? Japanese schools view appearance as an extension of character. Uniformity fosters a sense of equality and fairness. Strong social cohesion. The suppression of individualism in favor of the group. This can feel restrictive, but many students also feel pride in wearing their school's uniform. Scenes from school life. Daniel observed a girl nervously brushing her dark hair in the bathroom. A teacher entered, gave a gentle but firm reminder. Your hair color is unnatural. Please correct it. The girl nodded silently, a mixture of embarrassment and acceptance. In the hallway, a group of boys whispered about weekend plans, but their neat haircuts and buttoned shirts kept them united. Modern shifts. Some schools have begun to relax rules slightly, allowing for natural hair colors, more casual uniforms, or optional dress codes. But most still maintain strict grooming standards. Students who resist may face detention, parental meetings, social ostracism. Reflection. Daniel realized that in Japan, conformity starts young, not just to prevent chaos, but to prepare individuals for a society that prizes harmony. He wondered how this balance between individuality and belonging shaped people's identities beyond school walls. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 18, tattoos are taboo in public baths. Dive into Japan's historic stigma against tattoos, and how it affects everything from hot springs to gyms, even today. Shall I continue with section 18? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is section 18 of your cultural analysis. Section 18, tattoos are taboo in public baths. In Japan, ink can make you invisible, or unwelcome. Daniel stood at the entrance of an onsen nestled in the mountains outside Kyoto. His tattoo sleeve, a colorful dragon curling from wrist to shoulder, was hidden beneath a long-sleeved shirt, but the clerk shook his head politely. "I'm sorry, but tattoos aren't allowed here," she said gently. Daniel's heart sank. "Why?" Emmy stepped forward. "Tattoos are linked to the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia. They symbolize crime and danger here." The history behind the stigma. Tattooing in Japan, known as irizumi, has a long and complex history. Originally an art form tied to spiritual protection and social status. During the Edo period, 1603 to 1868, tattoos became associated with criminals and outcasts, as the government branded offenders by marking their bodies. The Yakuza adopted full-body tattoos as badges of identity and loyalty. Modern perceptions and realities. Despite tattooing becoming more popular globally, public opinion in Japan remains wary. Many see tattoos as symbols of violence and antisocial behavior. Public baths, onsen, gyms, swimming pools, and beaches often ban those with visible tattoos. Signs stating, "tattoos prohibited," are common. Even foreign tourists are sometimes denied entry. Scene, the onsen encounter. Daniel remembered a conversation with a Japanese friend who had a small tattoo hidden under his sleeve. At the onsen, his friend said, "I always cover it or avoid going. Even if it's not Yakuza, people assume the worst." Daniel realized that the stigma wasn't about the tattoo itself, but about the story it told in Japanese society. Exceptions and changing attitudes. Some places have started to relax rules. Private or family baths may allow tattoos. Tourist-focused onsens sometimes provide tattoo covers or special hours. Younger generations are more accepting of tattoos as fashion. Still, the cultural divide remains significant. Reflection. For Daniel, his tattoo was art, a personal story inked on skin. In Japan, it was a barrier, a mark that set him apart in a culture that values harmony and shared appearance. He tucked his sleeve down and entered the bath quietly, aware that his ink told a different tale, one still unread and unaccepted here. Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 19, Japan's respect for rules extends to queuing. Explore the near-sacred culture of orderly lines, from trains to elevators, and why breaking the queue is unthinkable. Shall I continue with section 19? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is section 19 of your cultural analysis. Section 19, Japan's respect for rules extends to queuing. In Japan, waiting your turn isn't just polite, it's sacred. Daniel found himself standing at the entrance of Shinjuku Station during rush hour. Around him, hundreds of commuters formed neat lines, patiently awaiting the subway train. There was no pushing. No cutting. No impatient tapping. Just a calm, collective understanding that the queue is a social contract. The origins of queue culture. Japan's queuing culture stems from deep-rooted respect for others, collective social harmony, the importance of fairness. Historically, from the Edo period's rigid social order to modern urban life, waiting one's turn has symbolized self-restraint and consideration. Queuing in everyday life. Queues form everywhere. Train platforms. Bus stops. ATMs. Convenience stores. Elevators and escalators. Festivals and events. Breaking the line is viewed as selfish and disrespectful, behaviors that disrupt the social fabric. Scene: the tourist faux pas. Daniel once witnessed a foreign tourist cutting into a line at a convenience store. The cashier paused, then politely said in Japanese, "Please wait your turn." Other customers shot glances, but no one confronted the tourist aggressively. Emmy explained, "They don't want conflict, but they expect respect." Queue discipline and public order. Queuing is not just about order, it's a reflection of how society values patience, fairness, and respect. People wait quietly, often in single file. Personal space is respected, even in crowded situations. Volunteers and staff help maintain line order during events. Reflection. Daniel appreciated how queuing was a silent promise to coexist peacefully. In a city bustling with millions, waiting calmly was a way to say, "I respect you as much as myself." Next section preview. Backhand index pointing right. Section 20, Conclusion, the balance of freedom and order in Japan. A deep reflection on how these rules shape Japanese society, weaving personal stories and cultural insights into a final understanding. Shall I continue with Section 20? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Here is Section 20, the concluding section of your cultural analysis. Section 20, Conclusion, the balance of freedom and order in Japan. In Japan, the dance between rules and individuality shapes the soul of society. After months living in Tokyo, navigating its streets, customs, and unspoken expectations, Daniel sat on a park bench beneath a glowing lantern. He reflected on what he had learned, not just the laws or regulations, but the culture behind them. Japan's many rules, some shocking, some subtle, were more than restrictions. They were the threads weaving a complex social tapestry. The social contract. Japanese society values harmony over conflict, group welfare over individual expression, and order over chaos. This creates a world where personal freedoms are carefully balanced against collective responsibility. Rules are not only enforced by laws but by social pressure and shared values. Behavior is shaped by unwritten codes as much as by written ones. Stories that reflect the culture. Daniel recalled the embarrassment of withdrawing his hand in public, respecting Emmy's quiet boundaries. The quiet warning from police about a street performer who was too much. The eviction letter after hosting a friend overnight. The silence imposed by neighbors against loud music. The careful phrasing he now used online, aware of legal consequences. The struggle to find an apartment despite meeting all formal requirements. The students bowing to strict uniform and hair codes. The tattoos that barred entry to hot springs. The patient, orderly queues that seemed to reflect a collective heart. Each rule, each moment, told a story about Japan's unseen architecture, a framework supporting coexistence. The paradox of freedom and constraint. To outsiders, Japan's rules can seem restrictive or baffling. But for those who understand, they are a promise of safety and respect. A space for peaceful coexistence. A cultural rhythm that balances individual desires with social needs. Freedom is not absence of rules. It's the ability to live within them, with grace, empathy, and awareness. Final reflection. Daniel realized that adapting to Japan was less about mastering language or customs, and more about embracing a new way of being. A way where freedom is intertwined with responsibility. Where expression is measured by the comfort of others. Where being part of society means knowing when to stand out, and when to blend in. He smiled softly. In Japan, rules aren't just laws. They are a language of respect, spoken by millions, understood by few.